From Washington, D.C. to the heart of America, welcome to Mark Alford's America. I'm freshman Congressman Mark Alford. I believe in America. I believe in you, and most importantly, I believe our greatest days are ahead. You know, each week we take you behind the scenes to share the stories, the legislation, and news of the day. We also meet the great folks who I have the honor of working with in Washington, D.C., helping shape our great nation. From time to time, though, we're also back in the district talking with some folks here who have pretty much done the same, working to make our country great again. Today, we're in the district talking with Andrei Kulikov, a U.S. citizen, but native of the USSR. Andrei served in the Soviet Army and was at Chernobyl shortly after the disaster that struck on April 22, 1986. He left the USSR in 1989 and ended up in Israel. Then he came to the United States of America. Please welcome Andrei Kulikov. Andrei, good to have you here.
Great being with you, Mark. Thank you for having me.
What, you grew up in the USSR. What was that like?
Ooh, deep subject. We had a great childhood. Interestingly enough, we did not know of all the bad things of communism and socialism at the time when we were growing during it. So I had a normal childhood, or what I thought was a normal childhood. Of course, as I grew up, and my generation learned more about the world and our country, our eyes you could say that our eyes were open.
How did they get open? You told me some stories. Repeat those about learning about American culture through music and videos.
Music and videos were hugely important. In fact, I think what really dealt, if not final, but a major blow to Soviet Union and its structure and politics is tearing down cultural barriers. And I think it's my personal opinion that arrival of video cassette players played an important role for us.
How's that?
My generation didn't have access to a lot. I mean, films, Soviet Union had censorship. They would screen American films and foreign films, but they were heavily edited. They were carefully picked, chosen by censors. Video cassette players allowed us to see films and watch normal, everyday films, such as, for example, Nightmare on Elm Street. And lo and behold, we saw American teenagers driving cars, going to school, wearing jeans. It was normal, everyday things that made us realize that if our leadership lied to us about these little details, what else could they possibly have lied to us about?
So you were a suspect of the government even when you were young?
Absolutely, everybody was.
How did you end up in the Army there for the Soviet Union?
It was mandatory. Army was, we were conscripts. It was compulsory. Upon your 18th birthday, after 6 months post your 18th birthday, everybody was drafted, unless you had some special circumstances or we had deferments for college, etc. But most of us went. All of us went. 1985, my birthday actually is on January 1st, and 1985, in the spring of that year, I was draftable and I was taken.
How did you end up at Chernobyl? Walk us through that.
Fate, destiny, interesting, unusual, I guess. Maybe unusual is a better word.
Well, first up, let's back up and tell people what happened at Chernobyl. There's probably a lot of young people listening right now. I mean, this was more than 40 years ago.
Correct. One of the biggest disasters, environmental disasters in the heart of Europe, 1986, and actually the date was April 26th. The night of 25 and 26 is when the event occurred. It was a meltdown. It was a meltdown, not quite nuclear explosion, but an accident, disaster that caused leakage, significant leakage, a thermal explosion perhaps, and significant leakage of radiation into atmosphere that still, in fact, has not been rectified fully. Right after the explosion, disaster, I mean, there's many words for it, but the call to respond, not quite remediate, but to respond, was taken by 2 regiments on a standby. My regiment was small. We were located in Kiev City, and other regiment for under Ministry of Interior, under a certain number, which I will not disclose, but we were supposed to respond to natural disasters. In Soviet Union, there is no National Guard, so Army kind of has to do everything from war to civil duties. So we were called up and not knowing what was going on yet, so we went fully equipped, thinking that there may have been some military mission that's assigned, but on arrival slowly learned the details of what happened. And then, of course, our missions ranged from containment so that panic would not spread.
So how far from the thermal explosion of the nuclear site there to when you went in? And how dangerous was it when you went in?
I'm guessing pretty dangerous. So we were there within 24 hours. It was about 1,300 soldiers, roughly.
Did you know what had happened at the time?
Not at the time. It took us about 2 or 3, maybe even 4 days before full disclosure came in. I mean, that's when orders were unsealed. But upon arrival, we were just given limited orders. We were told we need to contain the area, and something happened that may cause potential panic and massive exodus. So we were to secure the perimeter and, the usual.
And keep people from leaving.
Keep people from leaving at first, correct. Correct. So at that time, as we learned later, this was not known to the world. This was very much a secret. Europe and European countries learned of what happened only a few days later, at which point our mission was changed from containment to evacuation. So then, of course, when, so to speak, the cat was out of the bag, we were told to scrap previous orders and evacuate population of town of a size of approximately 30,000 people. How close we were? Fair disclosure, I was not inside of the reactor. I was never one of those teams that literally shoveled off the roof radioactive material. My missions mostly were patrol and security around the area, but at some point we were within a couple of 100 yards, 2 football fields away from. I had it in my view several times. How dangerous was it? To this day, we don't know. Equipment was malfunctioning. We had misleading or varying readings of radiation. We had some personal radiation counters, like field equipment, mostly designed for equipment and tanks rather than personnel. But I'm guessing probably quite dangerous.
Any side effects over those years? Have you had any health repercussions?
Initially, I did. I think I'm lucky to be alive. I think I eventually outlived them, I suppose, or perhaps come into better parts of the world with better environment and better diet may have helped. But yes, I did. Most of us or all of us survived immediate implication of radiation exposure. Some lingers. My friends are, most of them, still alive, and I would say that what plagues us is more PTSD from the event, from the surface, than actual radiation sickness.
So why did you leave the Soviet Union, and when did that happen?
After return from the military and seeing, one word, Gorbachev. Some of your listeners may remember what happened during those years, but Soviet society was either forced to open or could not help but have to be open more. And this inflow of information from the West was just overwhelming. I mean, first of all, all of our suspicions were confirmed, and few nights that my father and I, when I was little kid, we were fishing outside of town, and when we listened to Voice of America, which was very rare because it was jammed in the cities, but you could actually catch it, tune into it outside in rural territories. And so at the time, it seemed like conspiracy theories, reports that my father and I happened to catch a few nights, pretty much were confirmed by and large in late 80s after my return from the Army. And then the overall mood of younger generations, young adults, and my generation was changing. We almost overnight, what seemed like in a short couple of years, we went from being extremely patriotic and, communism and socialism as the only way to exist. It all changed, what seemed like overnight. And so then one thing led to another, and I simply took advantage of a small window opportunity to leave and travel west.
We're talking with Andrei Kulikov, a U.S. citizen who left the USSR. When we come back, we're going to talk about how did he end up in Israel? What are his thoughts on the war in Ukraine, the war in Israel? Got a lot to talk about when we come back. You're listening to Mark Alford's America. Stay with us. Welcome back to Mark Alford's America, where each week we give you a behind-the-scenes look at Washington, D.C., and introduce you to the folks I'm working with here to help shape our great nation. Today, though, we're in the district talking with Andrei Kulikov, a former Soviet Union citizen and now a citizen of the United States of America. He escaped the USSR, went to Hungary, and ended up in Israel. We're back now with Andrei Kulikov. Why Israel, Andrei?
I think it was a destiny unknown. At the time, very few embassies were willing to still accept Soviet immigrants from Soviet Union. Because part of it because of overwhelming interest to leave, part of it because Congress in 1986 or 87, I can't remember, passed certain bills that limited immigration from Soviet Union. So all the interested people, Soviet subjects that wanted to travel west or explore other countries, had to go to either Italy or Austria, perhaps. Israel was one of the options, and I couldn't say that it was necessarily a very popular one, but at the same time, I viscerally felt that I needed to go there. So I didn't even try other embassies. I just went to consulate in Moscow and applied for a visa, and after receiving permission to travel, after several months of preparations, went.
The Soviet Union doesn't just let you out, though, does it?
It took some doing. And I don't think we have time to go into all of the details, but let me just say that when I finally was through the process and getting my, not permission from Israeli government to travel to Israel, but permission from Soviet government to exit the country, I had to sign away my citizenship and my rights of ever being a Soviet Union subject. I signed a declaration paper. At the time, I referred to them as abdication papers. And the paper basically stated that I, declined my Soviet citizenship. I vowed to never return and promised to never seek asylum in any of the Soviet embassies of the world for a period of 5 years, I believe, at the time. So it was very much a one-way trip. Visa, it was an exit visa, and a temporary travel document, not a foreign passport. We did not have, Soviet subjects did not have foreign passports at the time, but a one-time travel visa to exit the country.
What did you do when you were in Israel? How did you earn a living? What did you do to survive there?
Lived in a kibbutz, worked in the factory for some months. Then longest employment was, short answer is everything that I had to do. Longest employment was in a nursing home. I was a nurse's aide for several months. Obviously not very skilled jobs, but as soon as any opportunity to earn a living I took, and ended up actually saving enough money in a short period of time to pay for further travel, and with few belongings I could accumulate by that point of time.
So you finally make it to the United States of America. How difficult was it to become a citizen here?
It wasn't so much difficult as it was definitely a process. It was official. When it was over, it was celebrated. It took 5 years, so there was definitely a process in place for green card holders, first of all, asylum seekers, residents, permanent residents. So we all went through all these statuses of permanent resident, green card holder, legal alien. By the way, back then it was perfectly acceptable to use that term, and I didn't mind. And after 5 years, I had to pass a test. All of us did. Naturalized citizens had to pass a test of English proficiency and United States history, basic Constitution knowledge, some other details about formation of republic, and then the very festive and empowering ceremony at the courthouse and state court, one of the courthouses, I think it was in Kansas City, Kansas, of swearing us in. I believe at the time one of the senators from Kansas, Dennis Moore, was present to congratulate every one of us. It It was definitely an event. So difficult, it wasn't, as long as you sincerely wanted it and was law-abiding citizen that, not a common criminal or didn't do anything against the United States, but it was a big deal and a big event, celebrated. I still have a picture of it. I have a picture of me sitting in a courthouse in my office after so many years.
When you see some 10 to 11 million illegal aliens coming into our country since Biden took office, not standing in line, not doing the work that you did, spending the time and energy to become a U.S. citizen, how does that make you feel?
It's certainly concerning. I would say that my personal feelings are comparing myself with one of the people whom we don't know anything about crossing the border, maybe less relevant than what I feel for the country overall, because for us, let's call it my generation of naturalized citizens, it was a process, it was a big deal, it was a crown event to become formally, officially accepted to Republic. For the numbers that we've seen coming across the border and then not knowing the future process for those people, I think it cheapens the process and it just makes us, at least myself, I feel, personally I could say that I feel almost invalidated, if it makes sense.
Yes. You actually grew up in what is now Ukraine, this war that Vladimir Putin has prosecuted for over a year now, has taken its toll on that region. What are your thoughts on the war between Russia and Ukraine?
Well, obviously, other than horror and disbelief and bewilderment, I'm not sure that I have enough emotional energy to even have other thoughts. It's terrible. It took me probably a whole year to digest and comprehend that it's actually happening.
What do you think is going to happen?
Honestly, I'm scared to think of it because I don't see a graceful exit out of this situation. It's because my friends and I talk about a lot. I mean, both that are here and those who are still in Ukraine and Kharkov City. We all come to a conclusion that it reminds us of this proverbial statement where an unstoppable force is met with a movable object. And you can use, think of whoever what Russia is assigned, what role to assign to Russia or Ukraine in that equation, but neither side has a really clear way of gracefully ending the conflict without significant consequences to security, assets, pride, and, of course, human lives.
Trump has said after he gets elected that he's going to try to reach a deal with Zelensky to settle this. It could mean giving up the Donbass region, that returning to Vladimir Putin.
It could, and I don't think anybody likes that. But of course, we don't know what the plan entails in detail. But I imagine that some form of negotiations will have to be conducted. And negotiations are, I wouldn't say that they're necessarily a bad idea because we still have to negotiate. Even after defeating our foes and enemies, we still have to negotiate peace. Even toward the end of the World War II conflict, there were some negotiations still have to be had. So what exactly plans Trump's administration will have for ending the conflict, of course, we don't know yet. But the mere desire and an intention to come to some form of resolution and discontinuance of the conflict is better than simply fanning the flames of war and the said conflict indefinitely.
Andrei Kulikov, what is it you love about America?
Well, freedom. To say freedom would be, of course, cliche, but resilience. I love resilience. Whether it's people, whether it's environment, nature, politics, anything. Anything has economy. By the way, let's not forget economy and American entrepreneurship and business. Virtually everything residing within the boundaries of the United States as a republic has this amazing ability to reconstitute itself despite, it seems like, anything that's thrown its way, whether it be wars, COVID, civil wars, civil unrest, division, political discontent and malcontent of any varieties, we seem to heal as a nation ultimately every single time, and that's amazing. That's unlike any other place I've visited or lived in.
Well, Andrei, thanks for joining us, and thank you for joining us for Mark Alford's America. We'll talk again next week. Until then, remember, I believe in you. I believe that our best days are still ahead of us. And Andrei Kulikov, I believe in America.
Great to be with you, Mark. Thank you for having me.